Dear colleagues, hello and welcome to our presentation. My name is Mehmet and I'm going to present our study for 37th IBIMA conference. As we can see on the presentation title, our study is about examining the impact of the legitimacy of social media influencers. Here the presentation outline. We will begin with introduction and aim of the study, and then we briefly are going to explain the literature review. After that, we are going to look at methodological issues, results, conclusions, and discussions. In recent years, companies frequently use social media platforms as an advertising tool to increase their sales by collaborating with influencers with a high number of followers. According to the State of Influencer Marketing Benchmark Report in 2021, with 5,000 companies, 75% of the companies plan to invest in influencer marketing by the end of 2021. Moreover, the size of this market, which was $9.7 billion in 2020, is estimated to increase up to $13.8 billion by the end of the year. Companies are increasingly collaborating with social media influencers to promote their products and services. The main questions which stem from this scope are as following. The first one is whether the influencer is legitimate for consumers or not, and which factors explains the legitimacy of influencers, and finally, are their perceived legitimacy affect the consumer behavior. Based on these research questions, this study firstly aims to apply the legitimacy factors to influencers, which was applied to measure for firm legitimacy in literature, and also to examine the impact of legitimacy of social media influencers on attitude and purchase intentions from the perspective of the consumer. Before answering the questions, let's look at the theoretical background briefly. According to the Carter study in 2016, influencer marketing can be defined as a marketing activity carried out by social media influencers with a large number of followers in order to promote the products of a company. In this respect, it is expected that influencers who collaborate with companies have the power to influence the purchasing decisions of the consumers and the gained confidence of the target followers. In order to comprehend how social media influencers can affect the purchasing intentions of consumers, it is necessary to determine how consumers approve of influencers. The relationship between influencer and followers is explained by characteristic features such as attractiveness, likability, similarity, and connection. However, influencers not only independently promote their own products, but also collaborate with companies to promote their products or brands. Therefore, the relationship between influencers and consumers should not only be defined through attractiveness, likability, similarity, and connection, but also through their acquiescence by the society. In other words, influencers should be legitimized. When we look at the conceptualization of legitimacy, Suchman in 1995 framed this concept in three factors. These are pragmatic, cognitive, and moral legitimacy. Pragmatic legitimacy is the evaluation of the environment in which the organization is established based on the practical consequences of the actions. Moral legitimacy is the evaluation of whether the organization is morally good based on the values of the environment in which the organization is established. And finally, cognitive legitimacy basically focuses on the permanence of the organization in the society and includes positive evaluations about the necessity and indispensable part of the society. In terms of the organizational framework, If the consumer is one of the sole reasons for the existence of companies, we can define consumer legitimacy as whether companies are seen by consumers as a constituent of society. In influencer marketing point of view, influencers guide the purchasing behavior of consumers through posts of brands. So, companies are aware of the persuasion of power of influencers on followers and promote their products or brands through these influencers. Just as how organizations and brands are evaluated by consumers in terms of legitimacy, which many scientists show their studies, for example, Cates 2004, Morhart et al. 2015, the legitimacy of the influencers should be evaluated by the community of followers they belong to, because influencers and companies do marketing activities together. So, the main theoretical basis of this study is shaped by these explanations. Legitimacy concept should be extended to the legitimacy of influencers from the perspectives of who follow them. In this study, we use theory of reason action for testing the effect of influencers' legitimacy on attitude towards the brand and intention to buy brand. As widely known in the literature of theory of reason action reveals that the behavioral intentions of individuals are determined by attitudes and subjective norms, and as a consequence of the individual shows actual behavior. So, the research hypotheses are as shown in figure. Hypothesis 1A, the cognitive legitimacy of social media influencers affects consumer attitude towards the brand. Hypothesis 1B, the moral legitimacy of social media influencers affects consumer attitude towards the brand. And hypothesis 1C, the pragmatic legitimacy of social media influencers affects consumer attitude towards the brand. Hypothesis 2, finally, the attitude towards the brand affects the intention to buy the brand. To test these hypotheses, data were collected from 511 people using the convenience sampling method with online surveys and links on social media channels between 15th of January to 20th of February in 2021. The sample consists of the participants who follow social media influencers. And also we can see the details of scales that which studies we adapted. As we can see the descriptive statistics, 82% of the sample is female, 85% of participants ranged from 18 years to 35, and another descriptives are as follows. As a result, we can say that the sample population almost consists of younger people. Before testing the hypothesis, the validity and reliability analysis of the variables were tested. Cronba alpha coefficients are above the threshold value of 0.7. In addition, since the composite reliability coefficient values representing the structures are above the threshold value of 0.7. So, it is to say that the internal consistency is ensured. For convergence validity, average variance extracted must be greater than 0.5, the composite reliability must be greater than 0.7, and the composite reliability must be greater than the average variance extracted. When we look at the table, we can see that all three conditions are met. When we come to discriminant validity, we need to look up three criteria. The first of these is to meet the Fornell and Larker criteria. According to this criterion, the correlation coefficients of the variables with each other must be smaller than the average variance extracted of that construct. So, it is seen that this condition is fulfilled. The second criteria of discriminant validity is crossloads. It is expected that there will be a difference of at least 0.1 between the factor loads and cross loads of each variable. So, according to the results, the second condition of discriminant validity is fulfilled. And the last criteria of discriminant validity is the heteroatrate monotrate value. According to the Klein in 2015, heteroatrate monotrate coefficient should be less than 0.9. So the results in the table meet the heteroatrate monotrate threshold value. So, when we look at the table, we can see the structural equation model results and hypothesis testing results. Partial least squares method was used to test the research model, and hypothesis tested with the resampling method with 5,000 subsamples with Smart PLS package program. VIF values should be below 3, and according to the results, there is no multicollinearity problem between the variables. And also the results show that the attitude towards the brand was 17.5% of explanatory, and the intention to buy the brand was 21.7% of explanatory. The predictive power coefficients, which is greater than 0, indicates that the model has the power to predict endogenous variables. The Q2 values are 0.126 for the attitude towards the brand and 0.189 for the intention to buy the brand. Thus, the model has the power to predict the variables. And then, when we look at the research model results, cognitive, moral, and pragmatic legitimacy significantly affects the attitude towards the brand, and also attitude towards the brand significantly affects the intention to buy brand. So, we can say that all the hypotheses are supported. After these results, what we can say as a conclusion and for future studies. Firstly, we can say that companies should choose influencers that are associated with the product or service. This is particularly important in terms of the moral legitimacy. Secondly, another issue is that the companies should pay attention to the compatibility of the cooperation sharing with the target market. Otherwise, consumers in the target market will not accept the social media influencers as pragmatic, since they will not believe that they will benefit from their posts in social media. As for discussions, we need to say that we can't compare our results in studies because it is the first of its kind. But we can say that this study also extends legitimacy concept through influencers' legitimacy and theoretically contribute to the Cates study in 2004 and Randriano, Solo, and Arnold studies in 2020. In future studies, the model can be developed by adding variables such as brand image, confidence to influencer, and consumer skepticism to the model. The model can be tested over specific product groups. Thank you very much for your attention and your time.